by implementing AI into your studio, you can, I'm sure a lot of people can agree, sometimes it feels like the creative part or the part that feeds your soul is 10 to 20% at the beginning, and then it's just all this work to get it delivered the way that you can see it in your mind. But if you're a lighting designer and a lot of your work is digital data processing, that's actually a blessing, because if we can compress that down and change that ratio between creative and documentation, even by 10 or 20%, then it allows you to do what you said you enjoy doing, or as a part of your process, Martin, of actually holding a light fitting in your hand and making sure you're happy with it, the build quality and the optics and all of these variables before you specify it on a project and put your name on it.
Flynn, welcome. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Martin, thanks so much for having me.
So you recently stepped into the AI space with your AI-empowered lighting designer, a course that probably will empower today's lighting designers to embrace AI, which I think is an interesting career move, as previously you were working as a more immersive and experiential lighting artist. You have clocked a lot of hours, a lot of years in lighting design. So this is a really interesting shift. So I would like to start with understanding your journey and how you came to move from the lighting designer that I knew before to the AI-empowered lighting designer of today.
Yeah, that's true. It has been an interesting pivot. I can say that I'm still doing a little bit of lighting consulting, but it's dialed down from like 100% down to maybe 10%. I think in the webinar that I held recently that you joined me for, and thanks for your support on that, by the way, what I shared there is, when I understood the power of light early in my career, I wanted to play my part or participate in creating a better lit world, like a better illuminated world. And I've like to think I've done that in my way throughout my career. And it occurred to me more recently after, watching the AI space and seeing the developments there and starting to implement some of that in my own studio and understand like the power of it and the scope for change there, that if I was to support, on the one hand, there was this very exciting new developments in the AI space. And then I was also, looking at my career and my mission of creating a better lit world. And the more conversations that I had, the more I saw that people were, tinkering with Chat GPT a lot, but they hadn't really implemented it in their businesses. So I thought if I made a pivot into supporting lighting studios and manufacturers to do that more, then I could actually amplify the effect of my mission of creating a better lit world. So I decided I just had a natural gap in projects, finished a couple of them, and I had some space, and I just thought, now's the time. I've got the luxury of space and time to dive into this. And yeah, it was kind of probably a bold and interesting pivot, but I also felt with AI that I had a feeling within myself that was the same as when I discovered lighting, or the power and the magic of light in the first place. So yeah, I just decided to take that leap.
So one of the conversations that you had was with me. We met in Perth at my favorite City Beach Cafe sometime last year. I don't remember when. I was at that time also already diving into AI, and I could distinctively feel that you had an interest in AI, and I could feel that interest. So I'm really wondering, at what point of time was there a moment that you thought, oh, this is it? Was there something specifically that triggered that, or is it just the fact that you had some time to yourself to dive into that? But was there something specific that said, yeah, I need to get into this. This is it. This is going to be so important for the future. It's going to change your life and our lives in general. Was there such moment?
I think probably our conversation came up at a point where I was starting to understand the potential impact and how all of our landscapes are going to change. But honestly, at that time, I hadn't made any decision around anything. I did make a core decision not to follow the work of anyone, and I wanted to like dive into it myself and uncover my own, yeah, not necessarily carve my own niche in the space, but more just to like enjoy my own journey of discovery with it and try and work out what would be meaningful to me, and then have conversations with, yeah, outside of a few conversations around this interview and the webinar, you know, you and I hadn't been in touch so much, and since that meeting at the beach cafe, yeah, I think there there was one moment that really hit me. Sometimes in life, I feel like you get hit by a kind of a lightning bolt, or like a lightning bolt, and that one for me was
Mm,
when I was working on a project, and I was in this moment where we've all experienced where you created your concept, your presentation's coming together, it's like maybe 90-95% complete, and then you're just looking for that one mood image that's going to just tell that story of one detail
mm,
of your project. And I found this great image, and that's the one I showed on the webinar. And it was a grid ceiling of timber with these short little cables with like bare lamps on there. And I just wanted to have a space. It was going to be a dining space. So I just wanted to have these one fixture per grid on this timber ceiling, and it was quite perfect, except for it was like a dark mahogany timber veneer on the ceiling, and it was supposed to be off white. And then it was right at the moment where Google's latest image, Gen AI, we'll just call it Nano Banana because that's what everyone knows, came out, and then I dropped it in there. I said, make the ceiling off white, and then it did it. And the image didn't look fake like a AI generated image. It just tweaked the image that was already there. And then I was kind of like, okay, that's a solid use case. It just saved me a bunch of time. And that's a pain point that we've all experienced many times over. So I can say that that was definitely a lightning bulb kind of moment.
mm,
And then I thought, wow, like I've been tinkering around with it, and I definitely wouldn't class myself as an expert. But at that moment, I realized, okay, this is like kind of getting serious now. Probably time to like dive all in on things. I do have a track record of, being excited by innovation and wanting to be at the beginning of the bell curve. I don't like kind of coming into things at the end so
mm,
much.
mm.
Yeah, that moment really stuck with me. That's why I put it into the webinar, because it was true.
Yeah, yeah. I remember I saw that in the webinar. I thought it was very interesting. Now, you, I think you're a Perth native, if I'm not mistaken. So now you're in the UK. Is the location relevant to your AI journey?
The move back to the UK was kind of, well, mainly it was a personal one, for my family and my kids. We came back to Perth and just honestly didn't feel like the right fit. So then we bounced back to the UK. But just having been here, now I can get the train into London and meet people, and I'm much more connected with the UK audience. If I look, people that message me and to the conversations that we're having on LinkedIn and where people are following me, it's UK first and then Europe and Australia and the States. So that's just
Mm,
organically where my network was, because I've been here for quite a long time, and, majority of my exhibitions and things like that have been here. Although my architectural projects have probably like 90% or more have been in Perth. So yeah, it's an interesting mix, and kind of fascinating that you find yourself there of all the places in the world, where you can land.
so definitely a strategic move. Now, I know you from Flynn Talbot Studios. Now you have sort of incorporated Kelvin lighting, I think you call it. Kelvin is your vehicle to promote AI, if I'm not mistaken. Tell us a bit about that.
So yeah, after having lived this career for my whole life, I'm well aware of, the pain points that we face. I also find kind of quite globally, even in really buoyant markets like the Middle East, for example. Just conversations that I have with people in my network is that clients are very well traveled. Costs of construction always seem to be going up, and people, you know, clients are generally expecting more, but it's kind of, people feel a bit of a squeeze on fees across the board. So, would you agree with that?
Yeah. Fees are always under pressure. So now the question, of course, is how AI can help us to increase fees.
Yeah. Um, so I thought also I'm answering your question in a really long-winded way, by the way. But I also found in my discussions around AI and other studios that there's a huge gap between what's possible now and the actual AI adoption of where people are at. So I'm sure we'll get to this more in the conversation, but Kelvin is my vehicle for using AI in a way that's really relevant now to solve pain points that exist right now. I just thought if I built an app, a product that was really high quality and kind of the best that I could make now and launch that soon, and get people using it and improve it throughout this year, 2026, and just then that would be a smart move to take away pain points, help lighting studios, do it in a way that was really intuitive. So one thing that always stuck in my mind, yeah, a lot of the space that I see that AI can help is less in the creative imagery of your project, a visualization piece, although that is very impactful and can save people a lot of time and help them, creatively iterate faster. I've put my focus more on what I would call the boring side of lighting design, where you've had your inspiration, you've been creative, you can see your project in your mind, but then you got to create this endless string of documentation to actually deliver that project. And it feels like the lighting industry has become really technical. If we compare it to other industries like landscape architecture or interior design, we've got more data that we need to crunch. And that side of things, I often felt sometimes I'm looking at a fixture spec on a screen and I was like, kind of just click my fingers and just have that in my spreadsheet or in my Luminaire schedule or whatever. This thing around the Luminaire schedule, and again, was in the webinar, but I looked back at a few projects. One of them had like over 100, I think it was 102 fixtures on a decent sized project, and it would just take like 2.5 days to fill that out. And I just thought, there's got to be a way to AI that right now in a like really clean interface. So
Mm.
that's the first product that I created because I thought if I can demonstrate something that works well, used to take 2.5 days, and now it could take you maybe 1 to 2 hours with all the tinkering and changes and all of that, then that would be a pretty solid place to start. And then from there, as a foundation, we could build out of that. So that's what Kelvin is. It's a combination right now of consulting, but mainly it's this app. And then through all the conversations, yeah, I just focused a lot on this Luminaire schedule tool. And I thought if I can make that really good, then that's a solid foundation on which I can build this year. So, very lucky now. I'm going to be launching the beta soon. Not sure when this video is coming out, but it's going to be around the time of Light and Building, hopefully a little bit before. So I'll have my first group of beta testers coming through, which, I hope you can be one of them. And then I'm just going to keep putting everyone's feedback into a big melting pot and just making it better and better. So Kelvin, this is a really long answer to your question, but Kelvin is essentially your lighting co-pilot through your projects from really the beginning to end. But I've focused more on the data crunching side initially. But the more beta users that I get in there, I want people to vote on which features we should build next, because I want to kind of, you know, I can build things that I know are going to be useful, but I also am aware that I don't know I don't know everything, and I certainly don't know everything about every market. So I want to be really responsive with it in that way and build something that's actually useful and tailored, like specifically to our industry.
So that also brings a question about lighting manufacturers, because obviously projects can be in different countries. They might have different manufacturers, different suppliers. In order to do that selection, that product selection, and create that cut sheet, do you need to put in manufacturers, or do you do that? How does that work? You might have explained it in your webinar. I can't remember, but I would imagine that there might be some sort of pre-selection needed in terms of light fittings that are solid, that are good. I mean, I have in my studio the habit of I want to have played with the light fitting before I specified it. I find it very hard to specify purely from a catalog. I want to play with it. I want to see it. But that's maybe my human experience part that does that. But how do you combine that AI selection process with the selection of light fixtures manufacturers? People may have different preferences, different suppliers or manufacturers they like. How does that work?
I caught most of what you said there, Martin, but unfortunately it was breaking up a little bit. But what I got was, and I think this is something also that AI can help with a lot by taking like compressing the data documentation side, allow us to spend more time with light fixtures in our hands and actually doing the tests that lighting designers love, like doing the shootouts, 3 or 5 or 10 fixtures or whatever, actually seeing the optics on a facade. I was speaking to one guy in Rehab who did a facade linear fixtures. He did a shootout with 16 different manufacturers, which I thought was absolutely amazing data to have done. I was kind of like, whoa, I never went to that much effort. But wouldn't that be great if everyone had the time to do that? But in terms of specifying fixtures, yeah, the tool that I created in Kelvin right now is when you know what the fixtures are. So it's kind of like, okay, we've done our tests, we've tried different samples, we're clear on what we want to, here's L6 or AA10 or however you want to call it. You clear on what those fixtures are, and now you just want to wave your magic wand and just have them all in a link or a spreadsheet or whatever to share with people. So that's the point of that where Kelvin helps right now. And if you need to change things, that's fine. It's all doable as well. But and the way that you do that is you either paste in a link for manufacturer. If some of the bigger manufacturers that have bigger, more extensive websites where they have a unique URL for each product, you
Mhm.
paste that URL in and basically will extract all of the data, the images and all of the specs of the product. Right now it's like at 80-90% because every lighting manufacturer's website is different. So it needs a little bit of custom code for every manufacturer. But from my side, it will only work for lighting designers if it works for every brand. So it's just a huge process that we have to go through, but effectively will allow you to specify anything. So you can either paste a URL, upload a PDF spec sheet, or you can just manually fill it out because it's essentially it's a spreadsheet in your browser that just happens to be tailored to lighting design. Did I answer your
Makes
question?
sense. Makes sense. Yeah. I understand now. Now, you also, obviously, you have identified quite a lot of pain points in the lighting design workflow. I think you identified more than 50 or close to 50 different pain points in your, you call it what, 6D schedule within the different processes that we go through in our workflow. So this is obviously one of them. Are there other ones that you are already focusing on to help with the AI tools that we have to our disposal?
Yeah, so I identified it's not everything, but it's kind of like
Mm.
the core procedures or the core design process from start to finish had 46 key steps. And some of those were able to be broken down into subtasks, or we'll call them tasks. And then I was able to fit those under 6 pillars. So the first one is kind of pitching on projects and winning work. So that only applies to, studio owners and more management, and then there's concepts, there's kind of, design development after you're iterating, then you're moving into design, and then you're getting ready for tender and documentation, and then you're delivering the project, which I bundled a whole bunch of stuff together, which is, dealing with all the value engineering and the request from information from site, and then you're creating handover documents at the end. So when I look at all of these tasks, that's actually quite valuable just to look at and remember all of the stuff that we all have to do to deliver great projects. When I started compiling, I feel like a lot of people that I talk to, they know, they instinctually know all of these processes, but not everyone has actually created, like SOPs for their business. Their staff haven't really sat back and looked at that whole process and created kind of a formula to it. A lot of people are just diving into that creative process with excitement and then navigating through and then ending up with a finished project at the end. But I feel like there's some value to just take the eagle eye view of the whole lighting designer's process and then understand that probably 80 to 90% of it can be touched or optimized or something by AI, either in a huge way, taking something that takes a few days and getting it to take an hour or less. I have been to, make.com or N8N, these like tools that you use to create AI automations without code. I've been to some of their buildathon events in London and they had
Mm.
people up on stage. Yeah, one guy's company worked for a manufacturing company, not in lighting, but I think they were making like cherry pickers and farm machinery. And he said he took a process that would have been a few people, over a period of time, but it was roughly like 40 hours of stuff, of work and iteration and editing. And he reckons he got it down to 45 seconds. And that was just how long it took for the automation to actually run. And then his company changed his role and made him like digital automation expert. But he said at the beginning he was just kind of lazy and trying to do his work faster. I think that's a pretty amazing example if we can think across all different industries where that kind of stuff's going to happen. And we think about our actual lighting design process and what that looks like, in terms of ROI for a business. It's this game changing stuff to be had. But as I said earlier, there's a huge gap in terms of what's possible and what's actually being implemented in a reliable and tested way for lighting design studios right now. But the message I'm trying to share is that by implementing AI into your studio, you can, I'm sure a lot of people can agree, sometimes it feels like the creative part or the part that feeds your soul is 10 to 20% at the beginning. And then it's just all this work to, get it delivered the way that you can see it in your mind. And it's like that for a lot of, kind of everything creative, really. But in a way, we're lucky. And this is actually just coming to me right now. Maybe if you're a sculptor, AI can maybe have less impact on your work. But if you're a lighting designer and a lot of your work is digital data processing, that's actually a blessing because if we can compress that down and change that ratio between creative and documentation, even by 10 or 20%, then it allows you to do what you said you enjoy doing, or as a part of your process, Martin, of actually holding a light fitting in your hand and making sure you're happy with it, the build quality and the optics and all of these variables before you specify it on a project and put your name on it. So yeah, I think it's a really exciting time. I think AI is being super underutilized, and I think basically every studio should have at least one person who's going all in or
Yeah.
working with a AI consultant to just really understand it. Or people should buy your course or buy my webinar, or just they should be soaking it up as fast as possible, is what I can see.
So let's dive into AI and creativity, because there might be some misconceptions from designers of what AI really can do, and where do you begin using AI in the creative process, and how do you master that? How important will it be to master that AI process and have the oversight of what AI is going to produce for you? Because obviously we can produce 100x times the number of options and solutions, but somewhere around there, we need to find the ones that are actually realizable, buildable, and eliminate any hallucinations that the AI tool may produce. And obviously, if you prompt better, you might get better outcomes. But there might be some worry, maybe some scariness for people who dive into the AI world on how to use AI in the creative process. And I would love to hear your point of view in how AI and creativity can marry together.
The f- the first step is to understand that it's not going to do all your work for you, and you still need to have a masterful eye to check what it's doing. But one thing you can do is build a couple of AIs, one to do the work and one to check the work that's been done. So when you're seeing it, you're lowering the risk of hallucinations coming through. And then you can also set things up in a way where it's highlighted. The changes have been highlighted or the key points. So one conversation that I had is around in the UK, like tech subs or value engineering, these kind of substitutions that come in. Most pretty much every project goes over budget and takes longer than it's supposed to take. It's pretty standard. Part of that process, as we all know, lighting's getting installed at the end of a project, so it's often, unfortunately, budgets are cut in lighting, and then builders and contractors are, looking to create value engineering documents, and they can always supply stuff cheaper, and they'll get the ear of the client and try and get this stuff through. But it's never apples for apples, and it's easy to create, well, easy, but it's possible to create a really good workflow, just to use this as an example, where you have your existing Luminaire schedule and a value engineered schedule that's been put forward to create a automated workflow where it's checking and highlighting and either qualifying or disqualifying fixtures that either meet or don't meet all of the specs that are important for all of the reasons that either safety or aesthetics or meeting codes or regulations or whatever it may be. Clients already hired you for your expertise to put all this effort into selecting these live fixtures. And there's no one better to find similar-ish fixtures that still meet the design intent than the lighting designer. So part of our work now is to defend all of this cheaper copy stuff. Well, not copy, but cheaper, potentially inferior products that are not going to allow the project to be delivered with the designer's vision upheld. So yeah, creating a workflow around that, getting an AI to compare whether everything is, apples for apples, but then highlighting all of the areas where it's not. But then, of course, someone still needs to check that. So I think one of the biggest shifts is we need to understand that our roles are changing from doing all the manual documentation ourselves to doing less of it and checking the work of, an AI. Just say the word colleague, because this is, yeah, where things are at really. It's not really a tool. It's becoming more of a kind of an AI colleague for your lighting design process. And sure, setting up guardrails around prompting and all this stuff will help you to get better results, but we got to understand that it can't replace human thinking. It can't know all of the reasons why you chose a specific fixture or why you want to mount it in a certain position. There's always so many nuances on buildings. I'm looking at the image behind you there, Martin. Like some AI can go, sure, let's put some uplights on that facade, but they're not going to know exactly, the placement of the fixtures there because you've been standing on site and you've been on a ladder or scaffold and you've done the test or whatever. There's many ways where it's not going to be able to have the full context or be fully informed. But yeah, I think the biggest thing, and conversations like this are really great to help people to understand that our roles are evolving and shifting a bit. If we're not going to do all of the documentation ourselves, and we might say, oh, that's great, let's reduce that time by 20% or 50% here and there, we do need to be aware that 10 or 20% needs to now be spent on checking the work that's actually been there. But you can set up a series of hurdles so those checks have already been kind of validated by a couple of steps before you see it. So yeah, that's a possibility too. But I'm certainly not saying that AI is here to replace you or your workflow. And that's actually one of the questions I had right now. Like, what's your take on the industry around AI right now? Do you talk to many people that that feel that, it's going to kind of take over their job.
You're asking me a question. I'm supposed to ask the
Yeah.
questions. But no, I mean, you might have followed a little bit what I'm saying. I'm saying we need a new mindset. I'm saying that AI is here to stay. There's no way that we can just wait and see. AI is already here. We need to embrace it. We need to work with it. But it, like you say, it's our co-pilot. It's our assistant. But what I miss in everything is the human in the loop, the experience, because you and I have a lot of experience together. You more than 20, I'm more than 40. So I've been on site. I've been there. I've done that. So I just need to see a site or see a lighting installation, and I can immediately translate what works and what not works. And I'm sure you have the same thing. Now, if you, I don't know if I understood you properly, but I thought you said that you were also going to create an AI tool to check the AI. I'm not sure if I got that correct, but anyhow, the point being that we need the human with the experience, and in the new generation, and that's where I feel there might be quite a big risk that the new generation that doesn't have the experience, that hasn't gone through the actual project loop of a couple of years from start till finish, understand what happens at the end when you implement lighting and lighting design, understand what kind of problems contractors come across on site, what problems there might be with supply issues. If you don't know that, you can't anticipate that in the earlier stages of design and creation. So that's where my worry lies at the moment with AI, the human in the loop and the experience. If you have the experience, you can create the trust. And you were just mentioning the client comes to you because they trust you. Yeah, that's because you have that 20 years of experience of doing projects. But the new generation who might just start up might not have that experience. And if they rely on AI to create lighting solutions, how secure is that? Where's the oversight from an experienced person that has been there? So that's a little bit where I'm at the moment. I'm talking about 3 points that yes, AI can bring you the speed to create many opportunities and give you more time back. But your experience is the element that will bring the trust for the client. And then you as the lighting designer have to provide the integrity to make sure that what you deliver is actually compliant, is buildable, etc. So that's what I'm trying to push and trying to make sure. And that's part of the guardrails that you were mentioning, the infrastructure that we need to provide and create that provides us a safe environment to develop AI tools. But I think we're all sort of seeing the same thing. AI is here. We need to embrace it. We need to master it. It's not going to replace it. I said in my last presentation that AI is not going to replace you, but you will be potentially replaced by somebody mastering AI. So if you're not into it, and if you're not diving into things like your webinar or my course or there's quite a number of other people also offering AI courses. I think that's crucial if you want to survive.
Yeah, 100%. I did a quick post some weeks ago that was like smaller modern lighting studios, and I'm and thinking about this in a more deeper context based off what you just said. Smaller lighting design studios that have experienced founders and kind of know what they're doing can now leverage AI and compete with bigger studios. And the other part of the post was bigger studios that are complacent and not willing to change may start to lose some market share to more AI enabled, younger, more nimble studios if they want to just stay in a really manual, you know, stay in their lane with doing everything manually, basically. But your point around like what's it like to be a junior lighting designer now, joining a studio right now, or you're still finishing your studies and you're going to join a lighting studio next year. Really fascinating to think about. So, yeah, I mean, because we had to do everything manually, that forces you to learn things, and it forces like every line on that Luminaire schedule or whatever part of the process that you're working on is, all of that. It's like You've designed the concept, you've held the light fixtures in your hands, you've documented it all, you've drawn the CAD plans, you've drawn the sections and the details and all the things. All of that is sinking into you. And if you're not doing parts of that, I guess the responsibility then lands on the more senior staff and the founders to make sure that the next generation is getting the right kind of experience and they're actually learning and going to be able to carry the torch, because people are always going to build buildings,
Mm.
real estate, property development. We're all passionate about the built environment, no matter what kind of buildings they are or where they are. So that side of things is always going to continue, but there needs to be, yeah, definitely. I mean, this is another level where lighting studios need to evolve, and part of what they do now is to make sure that they're not just as many people like yourself and myself. I've had interns and staff with me and freelance designers, all kinds of different people in different parts of the world. You want to pass on the knowledge, but now the knowledge has to be passed on in a different way. And maybe the question is also for the juniors, and they would have already been doing this, but it's like, here's three possible options for this space, and here's the reasons why. And whether they used AI for that process or not, they're still going to need to be able to know those reasons why and prove them. And I think
Mm.
that's potentially a critical piece, and then have a dialogue with more senior staff and to just make sure that is actually understood.
Yeah. But this is a really interesting thing. I would love to understand what you would say, give us an advice to the new generation of lighting designer. But at the same time, there is also the older generation, like myself. We have a lot of legacy thinking, the way we used to do things. So it is a small anecdote. How I sort of learned my skills when I started with Signify, or Philips, it was called at the time. And in the design studio that I was working, in terms of learning, I went to the elderly, that is called the seasoned lighting designers. And I asked the first one, I was given my first job and asked the first one, how would you tackle this problem? How would you light this? In this case was a facade lighting. And he gave me an approach and a design concept that they said, well, I would probably do it this way. And then I went to another guy and asked the same question, and he came up with a different solution. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that there was more than one solution in facade lighting. This is the way to do it. And then actually went to a third person, and he came with another solution again. So it taught me that there's, first of all, many solutions to challenge, but also that I had to learn and make something my own. I needed to pick what I liked and then sort of create something that would be, I guess, my signature lighting design move on that facade. So now the question is, with AI, can we trust? Yes, you're right. We have to ask the seniors in the company to give advice, and that's the experience-based thinking. But if you also dive into AI and ask AI for opinions, how much of that is actually truthful and based on proper design thinking, and how much of it potentially is made up? And we might create lighting designers that use potentially unverified advice. What's your thinking about that?
Quite a fascinating space. Like
It is.
junior designers they're going to need to come up with, they're going to need to understand all the different layers and come up with concepts on their own. And if they don't learn to do that, then the foundation of understanding light in a space and all the possibilities, we'd never had more light fixtures available to us, ways of lighting things, than we do right now. It's almost overwhelming how many brands and new fixtures come out every year. I mean, I think it is actually overwhelming. So we don't really need more light fixtures, but you have to be fully aware of all of the possibilities. And I've said this in a few meetings in my life. Whenever I look at a space, same as you, kind of feel like a bit like Neo in the Matrix. You're kind of flying through, testing Like in
Mm.
your mind, within milliseconds, you're like, yes, that could work. No, 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 for these reasons. Yes, no. Filtering through all these different creative iterations at lightning speed. And that's a really important skill to have, because sometimes you're on site in front of a client and a builder team, and they expect something hasn't worked for any number of reasons, and someone expects some pretty good solutions on the fly. So you're a human, you still need to be able to come up with that stuff. So there is definitely a problem if juniors are only using AI to kind of do some Tinder style swipe through lighting concepts. They're not actually learning the foundations of lighting in a space. And they might be able to tell you why it's going to work and why it's not. And here it meets, meets the codes in these areas. Yeah, this is why I think these discussions are really good. So I think each studio is going to tackle this differently, but it raises a really really powerful question. And maybe the conversation is not just around guardrails in terms of prompting and AI use. Maybe there's also senior staff also need to put guardrails in place around which part of the design process AI is able to be used within their studio to make sure that their juniors are building foundation in the right way that's going to serve them in the long term. And maybe, like, I can remember when I was younger, for example, reading through Luminaire schedule that a colleague had created and noticing all the human error, just typos, not like a lot, but just a little bit here and there. And then finding out later that's because they used that same light fixture on a previous project, and they thought, oh, instead of manually typing it out, I could just copy and paste that in, and and that kind of makes sense. But then because of all the nuances and variables on a light fitting there, inevitably there was one detail that they didn't notice at a quick glance. The optic was slightly wider or something, but on the surface it all looked the same. I always typed every Luminaire schedule from scratch, and because I never wanted to have those human errors, because they can turn into really big problems down the line when you order 20 light fixtures from Italy and they get air freighted to Perth, which
Yeah.
done a number of times. You want to make sure they're the right ones. So yeah, I think you're just circling back to your point around, I think there's work to do for studios to define, yes, AI can touch many tasks within our design process, but as a studio, oh, I've just got some magic light beam on my face. As a studio, we're going to make a decision that we are going to implement AI here and here and here, and we're going to enjoy kind of like the time savings there. But maybe we're not going to implement it in these other areas because we want our juniors to build that foundational knowledge. And, you know, of course, AI, everyone in the lighting industry, generally pretty smart and innovative people. And AI is hugely flexible. So that's going to look different for each studio. And based off the conversations that I've been having, a lot of people have their own processes. And yes, there's elderly in a number of the studios that have always been doing things a certain way. And I think there's a the risk goes both ways of like not helping your juniors have the right foundation, but then also not implementing AI and staying stuck in your lane too much. I think everyone needs to navigate that middle ground, and what does that look like for them?
I mean, that might be easier for smaller studios than for bigger studios, because where is the oversight? And in the end, the brand of the studio stands for something. You produce things under Flynn Talbot, and people expect a certain quality and a certain creativity from you. I'm part of Multi, a huge company with more than 150 staff, keeping the oversight on the AI process. I mean, everybody agrees we need to integrate AI, but then it also brings with it quite a responsibility of maintaining the quality that people expect. And as you said, very rightfully, there is a chance that there might be something creeping in, an error somewhere, and that's not spotted, and it's sort of amplified along the way. There is a responsibility as a studio to make sure that whatever comes out of the studio complies with the brand image, complies with the standards and the qualities that people expect from that studio. So there's definitely a lot of work to be done. And yes, we're going to gain a lot of speed in creation and in fast tracking the pain points. But at the same time, we probably need to put in more hours in terms of checking what comes out of all these iterations and all the documentation that we produce. So on that point, how do you think the future, I mean, looking 5 years ahead from now, for instance, how would the future studio, which is driven by AI, look like? You have any vision of that in your mind, how that would look like?
I think first of all, there's like transparency with clients. I think by that time, I think there's hesitation from a lot of studios to say that they are actually using AI now. I know some are doing it, but not very many. So I think by that time, AI integration is going to be so widespread across basically many industries that I think you know, the AI influence or optimization is going to be more known to the client. I think one thing we've got to be really careful of is that this kind of ship is steered in the right way, and it's not like a race to the bottom on fees, and clients are kind of like, oh, you're an AI studio, so you should be charging me only 40% of what you used to because AI is doing all your work now. Like that would be obviously a really bad place for everyone to end up. So I think at the end of the day, as you said, your clients are paying you for expertise and creativity and problem solving. So we need to set up now the right foundations for that to continue forward and for AI to help where it's useful, but not to detract from human expertise and creative vision. Yeah, it's what's the landscape going to look like? Quite fascinating. So both of us were in the lighting industry before LED was on the scene. I've seen huge changes in that space, and I think now we're looking at something equally as massive that's happening kind of 10 times faster. And a lot of people, even in the AI space, I've been learning a lot and researching a lot and sitting in on other webinars with, Sam Altman, co-founder of OpenAI, and all these people. And they have all these research teams and they kind of think they know where things are heading, but even they don't totally know. And they, openly say that sometimes. So, yeah, on the one hand, they said there was more people were willing to pay for ChatGPT than what they thought, but actual adoption from humans and from businesses has been less than what they predicted. So yeah, I think there's some people that are going to be really leaned in and they're going to find the right foundation. I guess they're probably going to stuff up on a couple of projects. There's probably going to be some errors if they're relying on AI too much, and then they'll hopefully learn from that and dial it back in and evolve what their roles actually are. There'll be people that have great wins in the visualization space, and they'll be allow them to be kind of creative, but creative 2.0, where you're able to iterate and try things faster. People who will create more systematized workflows, and they'll be able to maintain the quality of their presentations and their output. I think lighting presentations, by the way, people are going to stop sending PDFs to clients. That's going to feel really shit and boring probably in 5 years. Clients are really going to be expecting a lot more than that. So that's a pretty exciting place, you know, like it'll just be an immersive video and Martin will be walking around within the model and explaining, this and that. Much more interactive ways of presenting your work, which is very exciting. But yeah, a lot of it's unknown, to be fair. I think it's a really exciting time right now. I think there's definitely a lot of questions that need answers around, client privacy and data sharing and all of this side of things, which is a huge, huge point. But also, I think even right now, people are signing NDAs, but they're still, you know, using Claude or Gemini or whatever. Yeah, they're already integrating AI in there, whether they've fully acknowledged it or not. I think, yeah, I like to think with a lot of things there's a sliding scale between fully human and fully AI, and every studio's got to kind of slide that scale and find the right balance. But I do like to think that if the right conversations are being had and the right industry leaders like yourself are in place and helping kind of integrate AI into workflows of studios, that it will find organically the right balance, and one that is able to kind of amplify our creativity, allow us to ultimately design better and present our projects better. And, and if one time AI comes up with an idea that even you or I together hadn't thought of, but a client's paying us to do that, and we had created that AI based off our own brand and all of our own documentation and past presentations and all of that, then ultimately, we curated that experience based off our own expertise in the field. And, to be honest, I think
Yeah.
that's fair as well. As long as the main, yeah, you said human in the loop earlier, as long as there's still many humans in the loop, then buildings will still get built and real light fittings will be screwed to walls and mounted correctly, and everything will continue. It'll just continue in a very different way.
You mentioned an interesting point, which I've had in several discussions, is whether to disclose the use of AI or not. There are some people that say, oh, you should be open and transparent and you should tell your client that you're using AI. Others are saying, listen, we've been using Google search and Pinterest and whatever, all these other apps in the past. We never disclose that. So there is something for both sides to say. We also have the education where students now are using AI for their task, and when they have to submissions, they use AI, whether to disclose that or not. So there's a big discussion going on. But I think in the future, it will be taken as a given that you're using AI. And if you don't, that's your problem, but people will sort of expect it probably as it becomes a bit more mainstream. We're probably at the very beginning right now, even though there are people that have been using AI for a couple of years already. But it's a discussion that originally I thought, oh, if you use AI and you don't disclose it, you're cheating somehow. Now I'm thinking, nah, it's everybody is using AI, so why should you have to specifically mention that? People will notice it anyhow. So yeah, it's a bit of a we're probably at the edge where it will become so common that nobody will really ask about it and it won't be really an issue. Are you actually disclosing the use of AI in your consultancy, or is that just something that you just integrate as a normal step?
I mean, I haven't done yet, but as I also haven't used AI that much on projects because I just had a natural kind of finishing of a couple of projects at the same time in a space in the last like kind of 3, 4 months. I was using it just in a kind of basic behind the scenes way before that. I think a lot of people are already using it there. But yeah, I guess on the one hand, this raises a kind of ethics question. On the other hand, I think, yeah, as you said, everyone's already using it to some degree. So, it's an interesting one. Yeah, I don't know that there's a clear answer to that. I think it's kind of a personal choice. Maybe some people will win projects because they market themselves as a like AI optimized studio, and they're able to, maybe some clients prefer that and they're maybe able to get more technical answers to questions faster because of that, and maybe that helps. I think there's definitely going to be
Well,
clients that are
opinion.
pretty against it as well, or expect, as I said earlier, like you do your fees to be less if they think AI is doing half your work or something. But I would say if you were going to disclose it, I guess, yeah, going back to the ethics thing, if you are really AI empowered and you've got many systems in place and you know that it's optimizing 30% of your business, I think it's a personal choice. If you were going to disclose that you're using AI, I would have a kind of company wide document or link or something that explains the use of AI within your company. That would probably be the best way to do it. And then, you know, get some get some help to put that together. Because I think, like right now, you and I are having this conversation, and this will go out to some of the lighting designers in the community, and we're educating lighting designers, but someone also needs to start educating clients and property developers. And who's doing that? They're already aware that basically everyone else in the team is using AI to some degree already, even if they don't want to acknowledge it. So maybe there's a point soon where each studio needs a kind of AI legal document that comes along with their fee proposals, or somewhere sits next to the terms
Well,
and
that's the
conditions
point.
on their
That will
website or
be,
something like that.
yeah. I mean, that will be the point. If you do a fee proposal or you produce, you have your stages of work, you probably need to sort of shift from time-based billing to value-based billing somehow, to explain that you're actually spending still the same amount of time, but you're converting that in a higher quality and a higher added value of your designs that you're providing to your client. So there's a lot of thinking now to be done on how to approach that. I don't think we need to hide the fact that we use AI, but we need to now start educating our clients what the additional value is. And that's what I'm trying to promote right now, trying to show where the added value is in using AI and what the benefits for a client is and why they still have to pay what they have been paying us, or maybe even more. So I think that's the discovery journey in the months ahead. Or how do we make this count for the company, and how does that not diminish our services but add value to our services? I think that's very much the way I see things going and developing.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like that. I'm just imagining, a page on every studio's website, how we use AI, and there's a video there, and it just explains the design process of what it used to look like and what it looks like now using AI, and the amount of definitely value based fees. Client doesn't really care to pay people to sit there to plug in like low value data entry. They want to buy your experience and creative vision on a project to make their investment look and feel and function better. That's ultimately what they want. And of course, they want that for as cheap as they can get. But if they're building a proper building, they know that they have to invest in good lighting design to a certain level. And then if everyone's still being invited to, pitch, multiple studios will still have to pitch on the same project. And then if a client can easily understand, here's their pitch, here's how they're using AI, here's how it's helping optimize some of this low value data entry stuff. And then here's, three key examples of how they've used that time to do better lighting design. I think
Mm.
that makes a lot of sense, and it's quite easy to, give very clear examples of that. And that's probably the way forward. When does something like that need to happen? Studio I think everyone should start thinking about that right now, probably by the end of this year, just based off what I've seen about the, ChatGPT being maybe 10 times more powerful or so by the end of the year. So we've got, on the one hand, AI is accelerating like this, but then we've got all these people like us and clients that are in a lot of ways kind of resistant to change, and don't want to have to change their businesses kind of too dramatically. So the curve for that is a lot flatter than the curve for AI speed and intelligence and power and everything right now. So yeah, at some point by the end of this year, certainly next year, I would think that would be pretty common on most studios' websites or part of
Mm.
their presentation.
Is I would like to wrap up the discussion a little bit. Is there anything that we did not discuss that you would like to discuss, or maybe in another phrasing, if you could have things your way in the implementation of AI, is there anything that we would like to see happening or implemented?
I think based off a couple of the key points that we covered here around the future of lighting design, what does it look like to be a junior in the space? What does it look like to, not have a race to the bottom on fees globally? I think it would be important to, yeah, a few things I would like to see is in industry leaders kind of standing up and representing lighting designers by creating some, the kind, I guess we'll call it the guardrails for AI use in lighting design, and just educating on that so all clients understand how it's like AI is impacting every industry in the world. So do we just open the floodgates and let it come in and impact lighting design in any way, or should we actually put guardrails on that too for the entire industry to kind of, yeah, safeguard the space and make sure that light you know is still AI is being integrated in a way that helps lighting design and helps kind of maintain the future of the industry. I think that's kind of, it seems like a lot of documents and kind of boring, but it seems also
Mm.
kind of critically important. And yeah, the educating of clients in that space, more discussions, more panels with spaces outside of lighting design, architects, property developers involved, and just kind of like, yeah, spreading this thinking outside of our small bubble into these bigger spheres, I think's pretty important. And then, yeah, somehow getting some kind of consensus from, you know, people like you and other experienced people. Might call you an elder. But I just think getting wise people together to create those guardrails for the industry is probably going to be a really smart thing to do. And then within that, studios can decide, if they agree or what their version of that looks like. But ultimately, would be to kind of safeguard the fees and the profitability of businesses into the future. Which there's many people that have jobs in lighting design. Mainly, lighting designers are very important to stay afloat, keep the businesses going, and keep the industry afloat for the lit quality of the world. So yeah, I think instead of putting our head in the sand on a lot of things, we could be more proactive and more leaned in and steer the ship in the right direction.
Yeah, I think we have a very similar drive here. People say, well, why don't you retire and just go fishing? But at this point in time, I want to, the reason I'm diving into this is because I hope that we can keep the soul of lighting design still alive, the whole creative process, the human in the loop. There's a fear, certainly if you and I have been in this business for many years, you feel that things may get lost in this whole AI development. And I think that's why I think it's really important to dive into this and make sure that we create those guardrails, that we create the infrastructure so that the real true soul of lighting design still remains and is not taken over by some AI avatar who, yeah, also might claim to have that experience and design foresight. So thank you very much for this discussion, Flynn. It's been a really enjoyable discussion, and I think we could go on for hours, but I think we've captured very much what you wanted to say. Where can people reach you? You had a webinar that people can maybe still review or purchase. I can put it in the show notes so that people can still reach out to you if they want to know more. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you and present in Light and Build in Frankfurt.
Yeah, thank you so much, Martin. It's been a great discussion. The only thing I wanted to add to it before we wrap is like also embrace the parts of AI that are exciting as well, and the things that will make us like design better. I think it's really important. Like set up the guardrails for the industry as as a whole, but then also embrace the new ways that we could be lighting designers. I think all of that is really important. But yeah, just that one final thought. Yeah, thanks so much. Always a pleasure. Follow me on LinkedIn. That's the best place keep up to date with things, check out Kelvin.lighting. So that's my new company, a new app building there. I look forward to inviting people into some of the beta testing and then the first product release, and very excited to deliver the first piece of the puzzle out of these 46 tasks of the lighting designer as I kind of defined them, just starting on that one, getting that one working well. And by the end of this year, there'll be many more, and it'll be valuable for studios, whether you're one person or you got 50 people or 150 or however many Nelty has right now. Yeah, whether you're a super huge studio or you're one person, it will be valuable for you. So yeah, check me out on LinkedIn on Kelvin.lighting, and yeah, real pleasure. I look forward to seeing you in Frankfurt.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Martin.